I'm going to start with this rainbow because we just had a beautiful rainbow appear when we were gathering. And the rainbow was actually kind of the culmination of my talk tonight, is actually the rainbow. Because this ancient science that is the preliminary science that the Vedas were born out of, and hence, therefore, Tibetan Buddhism and the Hebrew traditions and many traditions have been born out of this ancient wisdom base. And the culmination of their teaching was to be able to achieve your rainbow light body. So what does that mean? And how does that work? I actually had an experience. I was blessed in my life to have an experience where my beautiful 23-year-old son that grew up with Nikki's lovely, and Judd is the father of Marley and Nikki, and Marley grew up with my son Talishan, and I actually wrote a book about Talishan. It's called Talishan's Rainbow. I can pass this around, but so you can look at the pictures in there. But so what happened was Talishan got on the train in Portland, and it was the first day of Ramadan, very important day to the Muslim people, which is 25% of our planet, I believe, population. And Islamophobia was at its peak because Trump had just done the travel ban. There was just the Twin Towers, all of these things created a lot of Islamophobia. And Talishan was very interested in solving that racist attitude. And he was in Reed College, and he was studying comparative religions. And he wrote papers and went to every talk he could about Islamophobia. So when he got on that train and this white supremacist was harassing two young Muslim girls, he stood up to defend the girls. And unfortunately, the dude had a knife and he knew how to use it, and he managed to kill two people and harm another. And Talishan was one that died. But after he died, he came to me in a dream 2 weeks after he died. And by the way, when he died, I'm not supposed to touch the mic. When he died, I was with the Rinpoche. I had just recently made friends with Sangye Khandro, who's the mother of the Tashi Cholin Buddhist monastery out in the Kolstein. Her son was dating my daughter. And all of a sudden, she wanted to meet me, and we started talking about the principles of Buddhism. And because I knew the Vastu Shastra work, and that's the core foundation of Tibetan Buddhism, I was able to explain to them a lot of the principles of things that they were working on translating. You know, they were translating with a great Rinpoche in Tibet. So I was helping them with some of the principles, and they realized that, well, apparently we became friends, and that was fun. So she invited me to this talk, and I was at this talk where this Rinpoche came from Tibet and was giving a blessing to the children of Ashland. My son, I was walking in, and my son called me, and he wanted to talk, which we talked every day. And I was like, I'm on my way in to see this Rinpoche. I don't want to be late. I'll call you when I get out. And he got on the train, and I went in, and we had 2 hours of prayer. And when I came out, he was already dead. So 2 weeks later, right away, it was the new moon. The Rinpoche began prayers, and there was a whole group of people doing a ceremony out in the Tashi Cholin. There is a chair for you, Andre, right there. Welcome. Anyway, so, hello, buddy. Talishan came to me in a dream after 2 weeks of prayer of all these Buddhists, all these Muslims. You know, it was a lot of prayer time. And he said, Mom, I have to leave now. bring my ashes to the Vajrasattva stupa. I'm going to disappear into rainbow light. And so I grab your rainbow scarves. So we, all Cedar and a whole bunch of my friends, we got in the car and we drove to the Colstein with his ashes. And the monk who had helped us with the cremation in Portland was standing there, happened to be standing there. And I told him the dream, and I said, where is this Vajrasattva stupa? And he said, I'll help you with that. So we walked to the stupa and said some prayers, and the clouds were locked in, like, totally locked in. It was sunset time, total shroud of clouds. And after we circled the stupa with prayers, the sun poked through a hole in the sky and shone right onto the stupa, and a rainbow bounced all the way across the valley after he had put the ashes in the stupa. So the Rinpoche, the Dudram Rinpoche is, in 1980, when they bought that land, had flown in a private helicopter to the top of the mountain over there in the Colstein Valley. And he did a ceremony to bless the land. And when he blessed the land, he said, thousands of people will achieve their rainbow light body on this land. And Taliesin's event, according to Sangye Khandro, who's the main translator for Tibetan Buddhism in the world, she's the teacher of translators of Tibetan Buddhism. So whenever a great Rinpoche is going to speak on any subject, she is the one that translates for them. She translates their books, she translates everything. And she had me come out to the Colstein and tell this story. And she got up after I spoke and said, in all of the ancient text of Tibetan Buddhism, if you rainbow light body after you die, after you enter the bardo, then not only are you liberated, but thousands of people are liberated with you. So it was a collective event that Taliesin, who, when I was pregnant with him, his father had a dream. He was a flame from the sky. And we asked the Rinpoche, I'm not a Buddhist either, I don't know how this happened, but we were over there one day, and the Rinpoche said Nam Kai Meche, so that was Taliesin's last name, Nam Kai Meche. Anyway, the point is, a rainbow happened that is a collective event that means that there's many people achieving their rainbow light body. Whether you think you are or not, it's a collective event at this point. And many people who are looking at the transitional times right now are also calling that out, that this transitional time is a collective ascension event where we all move into a higher frequency of relationship with life, right? So I'm going to explain the science of that, because before Taliesin died, I was teaching how to achieve your rainbow light body, the physics of how to achieve your rainbow light body. And the reason I was teaching that is because I knew from my studies of yoga as a young girl that achieving your rainbow light body was the ultimate goal of any yogi and of any ancient great master, and unbeknownst to us, our goal. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about how that works. Meanwhile, I'll pass this little book around. You can look at it. There's a picture of Taliesin in there. And
Asha, can you tell them what happened tonight?
Yes, and before the talk, I think I was actually telling Missy that I was going to step aside and let Taliesin talk. And because he's a much better speaker than I. He was a Reed College graduate, And Andre knows. He had everybody bedazzled. Anyway, a big rainbow appeared in the sky tonight. So that was very sweet for all of us. Very sweet. So am I okay? All right. So achieving your rainbow light body. First off, we want to understand what our life is about in this physical universe, because we actually start. I'm going to click forward on this. I had a picture that I like for this. We start with, no, come on. We start with a 1 point. Come on. Okay, we'll start with this point. This point is called the Bindu point. In physics, Western physics, it's called the singularity. In Tibetan Buddhism, it's called the Dharma Dhatu, the Dharma Dhatu. And I just, after Tuition's Rainbow, I was invited to take a private class with 500 Rinpoches on achieving your rainbow light body, or the treasury of the Dharma Dhatu, which was written originally by Longchenpa many, many years ago. I don't know, 10,000 years or something, I don't know. Anyway, he was a great yogi. And so the whole teaching, which was a 3-year course that we took with a Rinpoche and that Naomi got to experience when I was listening to him, my brainwaves went right into making heart shapes across the screen. From being erratic brainwaves like a normal person, up and down all over the place, whenever his voice appeared, it made perfect hearts across the screen. Naomi got to see that. So this Rinpoche is a master. Anyone whose resonance can create that kind of cohesive flow in another person is quite the master, right? So he was teaching the treasury of the Dharma Dhatu, and that was also known as the teaching of the fast track to enlightenment by Longchenpa. And the whole course is about focusing on this point. Lest your I be single, remember that statement? This point is the projection point for the entire physical universe. In physics, this point is known as the singularity. And the singularity, the density of this point in Western physics is the same density found in the entire physical universe. Equals exactly, because the entire physical universe is being projected from that point. So basically, the understanding we want to have is that there is this great point, this luminous, clear light, this precious treasure. This point is the Dharma Dhatu in the Tibetan Buddhism. This point is found in every scale of existence. It's found in the atom, in the Planck. It's found in every scale to galactic measure. And it is, all things are projected. So we never really leave this point. What we're experiencing here is, I hate to say it, but it's a lovely imaging, a lovely movie that we're all experiencing. We could call it a holographic movie, we could call it that, but I never really loved the word holographic when we're talking about people. It's a lovely play of light. And we are all engrossed in this play of light together. We never have been separated from each other. And so these principles that you find in spirituality are all very importantly wound in this truth. Because if you realize that there's no separation between anyone, there's no other, we're all unified in this one point, then obviously there's no hierarchy, there's no racism, there's no, any of that stuff, right? So understanding the first principle of physics is utterly important, and that is the unified field, the unity. So I'm not going to read my book. I can put a link so you guys can read my book. That was showing how it starts to send pulses out. And basically what I'm going to describe to you is what a great master described to me as the birth of Earth. How does the physical universe become what we experience, right? From that diamond point. So there's pulses that come out and they start to form a grid. And that grid, whoops, let's go back there. That grid forms into an 8 by 8. Has anybody ever heard of that before? Okay, 8 by 8. Yes. Okay. So this is called Indra's net. It's called the original mandala. And this mandala in the Buddhist tradition, and if there's any Buddhists in here, this is called the Vajra. So in the center you have the diamond, the density of all space-time. And then you have 4 thunderbolts coming out. And those 4 thunderbolts, so Vajra means diamond and Vajra means thunderbolt because it's a combination of the two, right? So that was one of the things I disclosed to the Buddhist who I was working with. So this is the beginning. And then what happens after that is it hits the boundary and starts to spin. And some of you know what this symbol, unfortunately, the Western world found this symbol later through the problems that happened in Germany, but that came about really from people studying the ancient wisdoms of India, of the Vedas. So this is spin, and it starts to spin, and then it starts to turn, and when it starts to slow down, so when it first emanates from this point, it's moving faster than the speed of light that we perceive. And then as it starts to move through the grid, form the grid, and the energy moves through the grid, it starts to slow down until you have the shearing of light and you have a circle. So in the unseen world that we can't visualize between us, this space is highly organized with this 8 by 8 grid pattern. It's completely structured. And I don't know if any of you have heard of Nassim Haramein, but he's written thousands of equations to demonstrate that there is no such thing as dark matter, that this space is completely structured and organized with this pattern. And how it works is it holographically repeats itself through time and space without gap or overlap. And then for scaling, you take one of these little squares and you divide it by 8 by 8, and then you take one of those, and then, so there is an equation that Nassim wrote where the radius and the energy of everything in the known universe plots on a map where everything is 8 times apart. So it's all in the scale of 8, which is also the scale that's used in India. Everything is done in harmonics. It's our music scale, obviously, right? But it's also the scale that has been used in India for measuring. And the reason this science is so important is because we want to connect with that inner core, clear, luminous light that is the basic principle of all of our being. And how do we do that? We need to create a world that makes harmonics everywhere we walk, where our buildings actually sing to us and support. All the ancient buildings, my teacher who taught me this from the Vastu science was renowned in India. He won all the awards he designed all their buildings. He was Stapati, as they call him, which means you have like 5 PhDs or something. And this man, Andre, you met him, and this man came to Ashland, and I had the honor of working with him to show him Nassim Haramein's physics theories to show how they correlate. because Nassim had come up with this 8x8 on his own, not knowing that this was in the ancient wisdoms of the Vedas as well. And all of these principles map out completely to correlate between the two physics. So this, basically that's an explanation. So basically we live in a slowed down version. This physical universe is a slowed down version of this grid, right? So we see the shearing of light. Everything looks round. It's on the subtle levels, it's not. It's this 8x8, and it's all throughout time and space. And it starts in a two-dimensional, and then it leaps out and becomes three-dimensional. So I was listening to a Stanford physicist, and he said this: everything in the known universe is a holographic projection from the surface of a black hole. And I'll explain what that means. It leaps out and becomes the physical universe. But it is, if you speed up to the speed of light, everything appears to be two-dimensional, showing that this science is completely authentic and valid. Because the way it's described is it's two-dimensional, 8x8, then it leaps out and becomes three-dimensional. So you get your, do any of you know what the 64 tetrahedron grid is? I have it in here somewhere, but anyway, if you don't know what that means, it's basically showing how this becomes three-dimensional and creates the spin. The flower of life would be all of these in spin, creating that imagery. Many of the ancient symbols are easily described through the physics. So why is this important to us? Because Mayan, the progenitor of this physics on this planet 25,000 years ago, said, who brought astrophysics and he brought so many sciences, architecture to this world, to this planet. His mother left the planet often to go do other work on other planets, and he was part of the founding of the Sumerian continent. Mayan says that the only potential deviation from, some people don't like that one, it's all right. The only potential deviation from perfection would be found in the physical universe. Because everything in the subtle world is vibrating in perfection. Everything in the subtle world is in alignment with this clear luminous light and is in coherence with this clear luminous light. So it's not until we get this slowed down version of what we call the physical universe that you can have a potential deviation from perfection. And so that's an important thing to know, because oftentimes we don't realize that the rest of us is doing great, doing perfect, and that we are completely connected here always. And if we can just remember that one thing, it will get us through the day. So the whole thing about the rainbow is got to do with us calibrating our energy to a higher frequency. What higher frequency? Our own self. There's just nothing else but our own self, right? So if we have another idea of reality that is separate and apart from clear luminous light perfection, it can create a block in our energy field, and our DNA, which is spinning like a double torus, will not spin as fast. So we live in a very slowed down version of, let me go forward on this so I can show you the double torus. Energy turns to matter. That's when the plonk happens. This is the Vedic symbol for the formation of the atom. Don't worry about that. That's got to do with architecture. Oh, that's water, showing water with the frequency going through it. Let me see. I don't see the picture I want.
Yeah, 2 forward.
Huh?
I can see it. Go
You can
2
see
more.
it? Okay. There it is. Thank you, darling. She knows what a double torus is. So yeah, so this is what happens. When you get that, you get a 4 coming out, and then when it leaps out and becomes 3-dimensional, there's 6. So 6 ropes coming out, forming the biratio spiral, and going back in. So your figure 8 that you call infinity is found in this dynamics. So here you would have the Dharmadhatu singularity in the center. And then 4 of those would be coming out. And there are 4 emanating out, and they emanate out with golden light. Just like your heart pumps blood, you have the red blood going out. And then what goes back in is blue blood, right? So this is emanating golden light, and then what goes back in is the smallest light particles, ultraviolet light. So you have 6 going out and 6 going in. So in the center, there's actually a convergence of 12 lines in the double torus. These are fun things for people who are into geeky geometry and things like that. It wouldn't matter to you guys. I just hung out with too many of those geometrists. Anyway, but the double torus emulates everything in the physical creation. This same dynamic is found in the nanoparticle, all the way into every scale of existence to galactic levels. The same dynamic where the spin happens in the biratio spiral and creates this same double torus. So every cell of your body, every atom, every DNA strand is doing this dynamic, right? So what causes us to slow down to be really physical has a lot to do with programming. Have you ever heard of the flying saint? There was this dude you've heard of him. There's this dude, I had a picture of him. They couldn't stop him from, the Catholic Church was like, don't fly around the church. He just gets so happy and he'd start floating around and flying around. So, it was because he was so happy. Remember the Peter Pan story, if you're happy thoughts, you'll fly? It's true. It's really true. Because your DNA actually spins up. And if you let go of the burdens, if you let go of the judgment, if you let go of the things that hold us back from our true nature is a dynamic spin factor of light. And we will find ourselves spinning in a luminous world. And that's the ascension process that everyone's saying that this planet is going to be going through shortly. Apparently the sun will activate us. I'm assuming something's going to, because we're sort of sleepy over here, but something's going to activate us. Anyway, so the dynamics of releasing old patterns is very important. To just let it go, relax, let it go. So the teaching from Longchenpa, the fast track to enlightenment, was about letting go of all of that and focusing on that clear luminous light, the Dharmadhatu. And basically resting in that. I'm just going to go back to that image because I just think it's the best one we got going for demonstrating that feeling and sentiment. This book you can have. It's really kind of cool, and it's got a lot of information. Oops, we want to go forward here. Did I pass it? So yeah, it's this clear luminous light is the main focus, the Dharmadhatu point. There it is, we got it. The diamond. And when we let go of all the other parts, and there's a million therapies, try the psilocybin now. that it's legal. Try, I don't know, we've all used a million therapies, right? To release and let go of all the stresses and tensions. I seem to build them instead of let go of them. I don't know how that works. But anyway, I'm going to tell you an experience I had that kind of gave me forethought about this. I was 18 years old, living on organic farm in Santa Cruz, eating raw foods, barefoot on the earth, never got in a car, milked the goats, ate the raw foods in the garden, just totally do Kundalini yoga every day, watch the sunrise, watch the sunset, sun gazing, very important, we'll talk about that. And somebody on April Fool's Day, which we just had a few days ago, right? Somebody made alfalfa pancakes. Wow, I didn't really eat cooked food very much. I was mostly a raw fooder, but I thought it'd be fun to try an alfalfa pancake. And that day, there was 25 people on the farm just walking around in heaven together. I don't know what that alfalfa was made, where they grew that alfalfa, but anyway, at one point, I sat down and I just started to meditate. And I was told hours later that it took 3 people to hold me down. Apparently, I was trying to do the happy thought thing, the fairy dust thing. And I was just levitating away. And so when Sange Khandro went to give a talk about, which is on YouTube, you can look it up, if you look up Tulisian's Rainbow, you'll see Sange Khandro speaking on the rainbow. She said that in the past, there have been many saints, Buddhist saints, who have achieved their rainbow light body. Some of them sit and meditate, and their devotees find just their nails and their hair left after they're done vibrating into the next level, right? And then some of them actually just like raise up and levitate up and turn luminous and then just disappear. And she said she doesn't know, she names the different ones and how they did it in her talk. I don't remember them all, but these are the kind of principles that I'm talking about that we are all going to experience as a collective. I don't know exactly how it's all going to come down, but I do know that that is what's coming up for us all. As a collective, this humanity is going to move into another level of existence. We'll obviously have to do something.
Why not?
So, how are we doing? I could go.
It's about 9 o'clock.
Great. Okay. Good. Okay. So then I might continue on with some of the. Well, I did want to put some more energy into Nassim's physics, Nassim Haramein. Some of you have maybe tracked him. He's been on the Thrive movie, and he's on the Gaia TV, and he's been quite famous around. Nassim, and he came and spoke here in the early days when we were over on A Street. He's a good friend of a bunch of us. Missy and I are good friends with him. He has written thousands and thousands of equations to show that this physics is valid, to show the structure of space-time, and what we used to call dark matter is actually a structured, cohesive field of perfect love energy, clear luminous light, right? So some of the things he's done with physics are completely resurrecting an ancient wisdom that we had on this planet. And how he did it was through his own understanding. He just visualized and understood what was supposed to happen. And he was able to unfold a lot of amazing physics. So if you get a chance or opportunity to look at his work, it's here at the RVML. They have a whole resource center of Nassim's classes and teaching. So the Tibetan Buddhist piece of it, I think that's a piece you can study if you want to look for more teachings on the Tibetan Buddhist side. They're probably the more expressive, besides the ancient Vedic traditions, about the rainbow light body. If you want to learn more about rainbow light body, there's sutras and sutras and sutras and sutras about how to activate your rainbow light body. So, but this particular presentation I have up here is regarding the Vastu Shastra. So, am I going backwards or frontwards? Yeah, I'm going backwards. So I was just going to go over this a little bit. Okay. So this gentleman, Mayan, you've heard that name. Mayan was the progenitor of this physics, and most of his sutras were from 13,900 BC, 15,000 years ago. And these sutras were describing all the sciences that we currently are using, from mathematics to geometry to astrophysics to architecture to language, all of it. And so I'll go a little bit into this Mayan, these teachings of Mayan. First off, the word Vastu means vastness. So we're talking about the great expanse. And there's two, let me see if I can I get that to go that way? Yeah. So Vastu, with one A, is the Dharma Dhatu, unseen subtle world. So two words that come up in physics often are subtle and gross. Gross means slowed down and physical. When the energy is slowed down so that we see the shearing of light in the patterns, then we perceive that as the physical universe. Vastu with two A's is the slowed down version. So this Vastu is the clear luminous light and the subtle levels of existence. And the Vastu, when it's written with two A's, is when we're talking about the physical universe. So I'll just go ahead. The science of vastness, the inherent rhythm which manifests and forms the world, the stars and the galaxies, through the musical harmony which vibrates in unity through all dimensions of time and space. So basically it's the understanding, the Vastu science is the understanding of these harmonics. How are these harmonics formed? And they're actually not that complex. We're probably, it's a science that was once known all over the planet and is becoming, it's basically reemerging because of people's ability to study some of these ancient teachings and the way we can communicate with the internet and everything. We're getting stuff around. So Vastu applied is what I wanted to get to. We're harmonizing the space, the celestial space, which is the inner space, and the terrestrial space, which is the outer space, and then the built space, which is us making this society, building our architecture, building whatever. So we want that to all be in the same harmonic. We don't want to build a house that's out of harmony with the inner chord of a human. We want a house that sings with the human and supports the human. And so that was the ancient architecture of old, sacred architecture, funny word, the ancient architecture, the resonant architecture of ancient time. They had this deep understanding to the point where their main word is Anu. Anu is, well, para anu is when energy turns to matter. We actually got the same measurement from the Vedas as the physicists currently have for Planck. Planck is the first detection of when energy turns to matter. So how coincidental is that? So the way they scaled was by 8. So 8 para anu equals an anu. 8 anu equals, I think I have a whole thing on here on scaling, the scaling principle. I had to add this lovely man because he is always talking about light. Here's a statue of Mayan himself. Well, you can kind of see here, he was, his writings are profoundly beautiful. If you get an opportunity, I have a book. Andre helped with this project. Thank you, Andre. There's a book that was translated of Sutras of Mayan, and they're on my Pacific Dome's website, and they're available to anyone. But if you even read a paragraph, they're enlightening. His writing is so purely elegant because his communication was so to the core. I don't even know, oh right, we won't. This was the guy I learned from. He's the Stapati from India who was revered in India and won many awards. And then Stapati Ganapati. So he passed away, but before he did, he described to me the birth of Earth in terms, because I was correlating it with Nassim Haramein's physics theories. So he was able to sit with me and do that. This is one of Mayan's quotes from the Eintrim, which is the book that Andre helped me digitize and is on my website. By the way, I gave that book to Nassim Haramein as a gift, and within a month someone asked him if they could buy it for $10,000. And there's no copies around, so it was a really great thing that you did that, Andre.
It's the Om light, Om sound. That's the key to the resonance, the colors,
so
the vibrations.
Om sound, Om
core of
light.
the atom.
Exactly. So I'm not going to get into reading all this because I feel like it's just, it's stuff you can read. Ron Quinn was who helped me put this book together. He was a great student of Dr. Ganapati. And then the Kumarian Mayan science. So here's a really beautiful story. Dr. Ganapati went with a team of scientists all over the world to ancient sites. He went to Egypt, he went to the Yucatan, he went to South America, he went to, anywhere where there was pyramids and any ancient sun temples. And he told them every measurement in the temples to show that this science of resonance was known all over the planet. And you're always hearing these stories of, wow, they built that north, south, east, west. Well, they did every building that way. And the reason they did is because they understand the energy grid of the planet. And if you want to have a stable structure, you know how magnets go plunk? But if you turn them the wrong way, they go, It's got to do with that. If you build a building in perfect alignment with north-south grid, plunk, it is strong and sturdy and has a foundation that will be immovable, right? So that was part of the architectural principles, was building on the grid. Another part of it was to use keeping the center of the building being the Dharmadhatu point of the building. So when you, let's say I draw a circle, you've probably seen this before, a dot in the middle. So the minute you draw a circle, you generate a singularity. That singularity actually emanates clear luminous light and divine consciousness. So that's why people use a lot of symbology in their homes, in their art, to emanate consciousness into the field. Have you guys seen the Asian Oriental people, have these cool, the yin yang thing? Yeah, because that's the figure 8. Remember the double Taurus coming through, right? So I'm not sure how deep we want to go into all this, but it looks like I have time, so we'll keep going. So applied Vastu science. So it involves math, geometry, basic principles of dynamic alignment with physical matter and the subtle aspects of energy, right? So let's keep going. The language. These letters were written by, original letters were written by different movements of energy. When you get that double torus going, there's different patterns and things, spin patterns that happen. And the original letters were formed because there was consciousness involved in every aspect of movement. So I'll explain a little bit more of that as we go through the slides, but you can see the formation of the elements, you can see the formation of chemistry, you can see the formation of the letters of the alphabet. The original languages were sung. Mayan emphasized that language touches the heart and is capable of expressing the intention of the soul. So music. Like language, music is subtle manifestation of energy into matter. As vowel sounds, audible tones are expressed through precise measured beats. So the measurement of time is kala, and the measurement of space is dhala. Whoops, dance. You can enlighten people with dance. Have you ever watched an enlightening dance before? Each mudra, each movement, this is a profound science. And it's, if you've ever studied dance in India, you'll probably understand how incredibly intricate and detailed it is. This is Dr. Ganapati. He had a whole village of people sculpturing. There's a story of him. There was a large temple that was in a major city in India, and they opened up the temple for tourism, the temple gate. And there was, the way the energy flowed, it started a civil war because the temple is so powerful. The dynamics of that architecture was so powerful. When they opened that gateway, wasn't supposed to be opened in that direction, it started some chaos in the community. And Dr. Ganapati alleviated that by figuring it out, and he put a statue to catch and resonate. I don't know exactly how he did it, but he fixed it. And this is all through knowing and understanding the science of resonance and how it works. So he had a whole village. You've heard of singing stones in India. They have temples that, one column sounds like this, one column sounds like that. He would test the stone before he even carved it to find the pitch and the resonance. These are just more Mayan stuff. So he built hundreds of temples. So architecture, he considered the highest pinnacle of achievement for any civilization. All Vastu architecture is purposefully designed as a singularity point pulse generator. Basically, what that means is a divine consciousness generator of clear luminous light and support for humans who are clear luminous light beings. So if you live in a point pulse generator building, you're going to feel very supported, and you're going to have lots of energy. You won't be getting sick. Whereas one of the principles is to leave this open in the middle. If you put a wall through the middle of your building, it blocks the dynamics of this vibration coming out of the singularity. And so that's another Vastu principle. So if you go looking for a house to buy, make sure there's no wall in the very center of the mother wall of that house, because you'll probably have to tear it down to make a harmonic building out of that. So I'm just going to go forward. This is a description. You can see how intricate this is, how detailed. This is showing how the grid forms consciousness in each pada. Each of the padas of that 8x8 grid has an aspect of divine consciousness that they call dakinis, or deities, right? So I said this to Dr. Ganapati when he was here. You know, I really don't think that those deities or dakinis of the 64 grid are actually embodiments. I believe that they're aspects of divine consciousness. He burst into tears because he was dealing with a culture in India of people who needed to know that their deities were real beings, right? And that's what happened when Mayan came, or when whoever came to teach Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism has all those weird deities, you know? And so when I was studying with all those Rinpoches, and this is just a couple years back, maybe last year even, one of my questions to them is, what is the true meaning of that wrathful deity? And wrathful turned out to mean blazing. So when we talk about the thunderbolts coming out of the singularity and moving through the grid, that is blazing light. It is clear, luminous, blazing light. And so when they're trying to overlay physics on top of a tradition of Bon, which was pagan, Tibetan paganism, they had to do what the Catholics did when they came in and tried to put Catholicism on the pagans. They had to make the Easter egg fit in somewhere, and they had to make Christmas, which was, you know, the winter solstice, they had to turn it into Jesus' birthday. Well, they had, you know, you just kind of ad-lib it, right? So they had to ad-lib how they were going to put this lovely physics, teach the people that, and still allow them to have their traditions, belief systems. Okay, this is beautiful. The structure of the Vastu-inspired building vibrates with cosmic energy, and the bodily instrument resonates with this vibration. To create and offer the house of supreme bliss, and to enable us to experience that supreme bliss here in this mundane house itself, these are the prime motives of the Vastu science. So let's go back to Longchenpa again and the fast track to enlightenment. Basically, when I went through all the teachings, and I love nutshelling 3 years of teachings, and I could tell you the nutshell was this: bliss out. That's the key. It's called bliss out. Just let go of everything else and just bliss out. And I really love that you were teaching laughter in your classes, because, you know, that basically shakes up all that patterned stuff that we hold on to. Laughter just shakes it all up and releases it. And there's so many release mechanisms, ways we can release, but laughter is one of the best. Laughter is the best medicine. This is one of Dr. Ganapati's temples to a goddess that he built. And these are superconductors, superconscious superconductors. So you can understand that they basically are generators of divine consciousness. I'm going to tell you a little story. So I make geodesic domes. She might have told you that I have a company called Pacific Domes. I worked with Dr. Ganapati to calibrate each dome size to harmonics. So each of the domes has an energetic quality that comes with it. Intelligence, communication, many of them compounded things like, getting groups together. Different domes have different, depending on how resonant, what the resonance was that we used. So I had a dome in my backyard. I lived on Granite Street at the time, and a physicist down the street was walking by, measuring with his $5,000 EMF equipment, all the power lines on Granite Street and the EMF that was being dumped out of those power lines. He came knocking at my door. Asha, why is it that the whole street is dumping madly on these power lines? You have a transformer in your front pole, and there's nothing here. Well, I have a dome in my backyard. No. Yes. So basically, these superconductors, it's like if the sun comes out, what happens to the dark room? It's lit up. It's that powerful. A building can actually, and why Mayan called architecture the pinnacle of our society, of this science, is because a building can actually harmonize a lot of space. I'll tell you another story. I sold a dome. It was a 50-foot diameter, 25-foot tall dome to a business partner friend in Los Angeles who called Vortex Immersion. They made planetarium shows. And they were putting it at Universal Studios to rent out to people who wanted to use it for projection. So we make these projection liners inside. And when they first put it up, they hired a woman from New York to calibrate the projectors. She flew in from New York, went into the dome, and this is the report I got back. She walked in the dome, and there in front of her, in the center of the dome, stood a 15-foot tall luminous goddess who said, "I am the goddess Sophia," and each dome is connected with a cord of love to Venus. I've never spoken to the woman personally. This was a report from my clients, Kate and Ed Lance. They do planetarium shows all over the country and make beautiful content, inspiring content for people. They're on a good bandwagon mission. Anyway, I thought I'd share that because it was a profound story of what architecture can do. I'm going to cruise through some of this. This is some of the measuring. I was talking about how they scale in harmonics. And well, let me just get to that slide. The Anu being the basic principle of measure. You can see that word Anu written on a lot of buildings in Europe. Has anybody seen that? You look at the top of the building and it's written in the stone, Anu. Okay, so this is what Dr. Ganapati made me to describe the birth of Earth, and I just broke it down in these few slides. This is the vastness, and then he calls it the Mulam, which is the entire, the basis of all, where it all arrives from. It's the emptiness awareness, you would call it. Then we've got the Bindu point, and Om sound and Om light radiate from that Bindu point. And then we have pulses that come out and start to form the grid, and these pulses are so intricately described, each one of them, what they mean, what they do, how they act, the consciousness that they carry in the sutras. I've just got a little drawing here, but just know that that's a very deep science right there. Let's see. Evolution of form. Okay, and then we already looked at this one, which I call the Vajra, but it's when the diamond starts to emanate with the radiant light, golden light coming out. So then it's like we have to talk about the breathing. So you've heard of a black hole. Most of you have heard of a black hole, but have you ever heard of a white hole? A white hole is actually when the information comes out of the Bindu point, golden light comes out, and when it comes back in and it breathes in again, it's called a black hole. So I sat in a dome. My son had a company in San Francisco called Obscure Digital, where he did projection inside of domes. And he had a group of NASA scientists in there. They had just made this really cool show called, let's see, I call it Google Universe, but you could travel anywhere in the universe, right? And so my friend David McConville, who's the president of Buckminster Fuller Institute, was one of the people who made that. And so my son invited me to join their show. We're all in this big dome with these NASA scientists, right? And then David's like, does anybody want to go anywhere? And people are like, yeah, let's go to Betelgeuse and let's go to this place. And then when everyone was done, I said, let's fly out and look at the Milky Way. And then, you've seen the Milky Way. It's so brilliant, right? It's this cluster of light spiraling out. So then I said, so what is that star called? That's not a star, it's a black hole. Then why is it so luminous? And you could not hear a word, not one pin drop, for enough seconds that it was slightly uncomfortable. So I chimed in and I said, every black hole, every white hole is a black hole. There's an in-breath and an out-breath, and it all cycles through the singularity. And I said, you will find this out because Nassim Haramein has written equations to show this, and it will soon be part of mainstream physics. That's happening. That is happening. It's becoming mainstream physics because he's written thousands of equations, infallible information that cannot be disputed. And if he doesn't, he did win an award in Switzerland with the big physics community. He won an award, but I think he's going to win a bigger one now that he's solved dark matter, all of dark matter, and the structure of space-time being this clear luminous light patterning. I was going to cruise past this because we already reviewed all this. Let me get past it. That is interesting. We have one of our people in our group had a simoscope, and he would put a flask of water and introduce a frequency, and these patterns would come. So I pulled some of them, which I thought if you found a singularity here and you counted out, you could see this vibration of the 64 grid forming in this water, right? I have a few of them. Here, more descriptions. The double torus, let's get past this. We did this. I like this one because many people don't realize that, about CERN, the largest physics experiment on this planet, the most expensive thing we've done in the world of physics, right? In the front of CERN is this Shiva statue. And I know, I have good friends with a scientist who worked in CERN, and he said every single scientist in CERN studied Vedic physics and sciences and Vedic math. So just know that they are aware of this. From that grid, all subsequent geometries are formed. So you get all of your Platonic solids being born. When I redo this book, I want to show how everything is formed. All your Platonic solids are formed through the grid. It has to do with triangulation. Here's another frequency in the water showing patterns, and that's the pentagon pattern. And then we have the icosahedron. Oops, whoops, a dome slipped in there. Oops, Bucky slipped in there. He's my guru, I love that man. Actually, he was born exactly 60 years before me. In Chinese wisdom, that means something. So, this is important. I'm going to talk about this. So here we have the boundary condition. And it's 8. There's 8 padas by 8 padas, right? But here we have a 1 and the 1 because do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Do becomes a higher octave of the original do. So I'm just going to tell you a story. I have, you heard I have 7 children, right? The very last one, oh my God, was I ready to have another kid? No. So I'm up on Mount Shasta, and I'm with the daddy, and he wants to eat some mushrooms. I don't really do that very well. I'm such a fairy, I don't really do that well. So I just took a tiny little nibble, and then I just sat down to meditate. And immediately I'm hearing a voice talking to me, and just like full on energy going through my spine and the whole thing like all around me. And it's telling me that I'm going to have another child and I need to let go of all my fear. And I'm like, ooh. And it's going to be a girl, and she's going to bring in the 8th day of creation, the end of all fear on the planet, the beginning of a new world born in peace and love. And her name will be Joy. So I told the dad, and he's like, you've got the Mother Mary syndrome bad. And I was like, you're right. I just let go of that. Well, 3 months later, I'm pregnant. And 5 months into my pregnancy, this man calls me from Monterey and says, the grandmother spirit sent me to find you. And he drove all the way to Ashland, big burly beard, really like worked with soils, cool guy. But he was a channeler, and he had a whole tribe of people down in Monterey that he worked with in the Native American church, I guess. So he came up and he started, channeling for all my friends. Tina Malia was living with me at the time, and he started channeling for her, and then he went over to my son, and so I was listening, and he was telling my son stuff no one could know. And he got my attention. Then he came to me and he said, the reason I came is to tell you about that child that you're carrying. She's here to bring in the 8th day of creation, the end of all fear, the beginning of a new world born in peace and love. And so that was the validation, how does that happen, that the universe makes those validations happen for us at times. So Aurora was born. She's 24 now, and for 20 years, I didn't know what the heck that meant. The 8th day of creation, what does that mean? Then Ron Quinn, who I put this book together with, when Aurora was 20 years old, he sends me this channeling from Anna von Reitz. Anna von Reitz was at that time the Supreme Judge of Alaska. She's a total constitutionalist, amazing woman. And she wrote this channeling. It goes like this. When we speak of the new earth, take it literally. We are in the process of building a new earth. This earth will be in resonance with the original earth of Eden. It is the 8th covenant. Just like the musical notes of a piano, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, we will resonate at a higher octave of the original earth of Eden. It'll be like tuning the channel of your radio. All of a sudden you will find yourself in this resonance, and it will be effortless. So that was the first time I heard anything about the 8th day of creation. It was her describing it. But then Ron came forward and said, it's just like this, this just like the scaling principle of the Vaastu. So now I understand better about Aurora, who's 24, and a whole lot more. Anyway. Okay, so this is about the 5 rays, talking about the crystal light is the first light. Then it emanates the golden light, which radiates from the Bindu point. Then the deep indigo light, which reflects upon and returns to the Bindu. The infrared light radiates from the angular momentum at the boundary condition. So let's talk about that. Let me go back. Can I go back or forward? I'm going to go this way. Oh, wait, that's too far. Well, I'm just going to hold that pose a minute. So the the light produced. So whenever you have any, I was explaining how the spin happens. You saw the swastika, right? So what happens is that center point, I'm just going to draw it here. We've got our 8x8 grid and our center point, and then it hits that boundary condition and spins, right? Like that. So this is what is known as the arc. Okay, it's another word in some ancient physics term, the arc. Remember the story of the Ark of the Covenant, right? So it is the Ark of the Covenant was a generator that was built with these principles, and it was gifted, according to Edgar Cayce, it was gifted to humanity so that we could commune with divine consciousness. So basically this created the clear, it was a superconductor creating consciousness, clear luminous light consciousness for us to sit and meditate with so that we could resonate with that and feel that inner as our own self, right? So when this starts to spin, this is the arc and this is the angle, it releases infrared light here and at these 4 points. And then you get your archangels. Here's the arc shooting out and the angle. This is there's the original Purusha mandala is what it's called. That mandala is generated in one place only. But it holographically reproduces itself to create this whole display of light that we view, right? But there is one mandala, and here are the archangels, which you guys know, the 4 directions and the different angels. I have it written down somewhere. I didn't put it in the book, but I probably will at some point. So I thought I'd explain that because I figured that one out myself, but I've had it validated by a few people. Let's see. This is just showing the measure of humans being, proportional geometry as proportioned with the grid. See that? So you've got your Bindu point, and you've got so you're going to get your Marma points here, which is what's used in the Oriental medicines. And one of the reasons that there's a tilt like that is, this is something I figured out, but Nassim had already known about it. So when I went to start talking to him, he's like, "You mean this?" And every time I think I came up with something, he's already been there. He's amazing. Anyway, like we talked about with the building, when you go north-south, you want that magnetic to be solid, right? The magnetism. So with humans, we're actually not. We want to walk around. We don't want to be, if we lay down, plunk, we're down, right? So we want to be upright, and we don't want the gravity to pull us too much. So that's why we would be at an angle. Yes, and spaceships as well, by the way. They don't fly in squares. They fly like that. You know what I mean? Like a spaceship is looking more like this. Whoops, something like that. All right. We're always trying to figure out how to fly a spaceship, you know. So this is the Marma points. So these are spin points that happen. Sorry about the complex grid. I didn't want to get into explaining too much about that. We're just going to go with the 8x8, but it actually turns into a 9x9 grid when it's another. I could get into deep stuff with that one. I'm not going to go there. Because the nine is in the Vedic. What disappears when you add, anybody do numerology in here? When you start adding numbers, 9 disappears over and over again because it's not really part of the true grid of 8x8. It's an illusory construct, so it will always vanish. And Vedic mathematicians can outdo any supercomputer. I've watched them do it. Somebody, we're going to save questions till the last, sorry. Marma points are spin points. So the Earth has, the same dynamics, and in the Earth is also spin points. This is a really wonderful demonstration of that flask of water with the cymoscope and a vibration going in, showing the Bindu point, showing the 4 major Marma points around it, and then 8 minor Marma points around it. So all these dynamics are just going to be seen over and over again in our physical reality. Here we have it, we have our Bindu point, our throat chakra, our third eye. Some of these aren't exactly on spot because my art is lacking, but you get the point. So I, one morning, wrote this prayer when I was with Nassim. I didn't know what Atman meant when I wrote this prayer, but I found out later it means the true nature of yourself. Dear Atman of my soul, may your eternal light shine forth from my brow. May the vastness of your peace permeate my being. Permeate my heart with the pulse of thy divine love until it overflows with thy sweet nectar. My soul is eternally tethered to thy peace at the womb of thy blissful creation. May balance and equanimity enshroud my being. May all my creativity be used to bring forth thy perfect creation. Light the path before me that I may walk in thy blessed beauty unto eternity. Good old Marma points. This was something I wrote for the emissaries that were training with Nassim, showing gravity and orientation of the Vastu Purusha, which was what I was showing you. Okay, the 5 elements. So this is interesting because, as the energy moves through the grid, it forms all of these elements. And once, when we were at this emissary training with Nassim in Tulum, we got to go to a Mayan pyramid with a private showing of this Mayan pyramid, but we couldn't go inside. We got to be around the outside and walk around and climb up it and all that, but we couldn't go inside. So I sketched this out on the ground to the man who was the caretaker of the pyramid, and he said it was exactly the same colors and everything inside the pyramid. Yeah. So space being the center, the crystal clear light emanating from the primal source. Air is looking at the energy grid in relation to its application on the earth. This gets a little fire, let's just go through them. Water, earth being the final generation, and this is, when they build a building, they do ceremonies like this. They put these stones that represent space, earth, air, fire, and water, and they plant crystals in the ground. I've been in a couple of Vedic ceremonies. They're pretty cool. I don't think I want to get into this. So just as the ancient cities were established on these calculations, so will the new cities of light, through applying the physics of conscious architecture. So basically that was oops, we're not going to get into this. I'm just going to cruise along the end.
You said you had a meditation or breathing you were going to get to?
Oh yeah, let's do that. Okay, yeah, because did you tell me I had till 9?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that's a long time.
I got questions.
Yeah, oh good, okay, great. Then I probably, maybe I should just go back to I'll just go back to the beginning of this. Can you do that yourself? Okay,
The feminine
thank you.
aspect.
Huh?
The feminine aspect. Pratika.
Something. Yes.
Really crucial. And we-
So I'm going to get rid of this. And so we were going to do this phi ratio breathing, which on the heart math, they have equipment. You hold on to these rods, and it measures your coherence. And so, have any of you done heart math equipment? Yeah. So, good. So you hold this equipment, and you might focus on your meditation or your mantra or your breathing or whatever it is. But this seriously made the difference for everybody, where they went into 100% cohesion, every single person that tried this breathing. So it's definitely potent and powerful, thanks to Dr. Ed Kellogg, who hopefully will come and speak here one day. He's an amazing person in our community. So I'm going to go ahead and count it out, and you will just close your eyes and inhale to the count of 7, exhale to the count of 11, and I'll try to do it at a good pace where you're not what's the word? Yeah, something. Okay. So I'll close our eyes. We're going to focus on the clear, luminous light in our heart, and we're going to inhale to the count of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale to 11. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Inhale 7, 3, 4, 6. Exhale 11. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Inhale 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale 11. Okay. So I'm also happy to repeat any beautiful information anybody wants to share. It doesn't have to be a question. So,
What's the name of your book?
well, it's right there. The
Okay.
Vastu Science, Mayan Science of Universal Harmonics. It's just a working title. I was going to call it The Blueprint of Creation, but then I found out there's another book called that already. So, anyway, yeah. So.
So, what was on there with the grid and then the circular, that's basically how the dome patterns?
The geometries are all born from, I wonder if I have I'm looking for my 64 tetrahedron grid because it shows, okay, do you remember this? Okay, so this is scientific magnets. We built a 64 tetrahedron grid using scientific magnets. This was a project Libby and I got into together. She's one of our geometry team, amazing woman. And I wanted to show, I asked Nassim, how does the Sri Yantra relate to the 64 grid? And he said, Asha, that's for you to show. It's just a photograph taken from the corner angle, but you can see the Sri Yantra. Okay, so do you know about the Sri Yantra? Does anybody not know about? Sri Yantra is another Vedic symbol that was used for meditation. And it's a potent, as I mentioned before, even these in art, it can become a conductor of the clear, luminous light consciousness. So when you meditate in front of a Sri Yantra, this was research done by, I think it was an MIT group. Ed has the research. He brought it to our hedronist meeting once. He's a scholar. And so they did an experiment with a bunch of people, 100 people using this modality of a mantra, using this modality of breath techniques, this modality for meditation, but they were trying to see what they could do to manifest. They wanted to see if manifestation of their intentions was activated by any of these modalities. And this was, the Sri Yantra was the only one that went above chance. And it went quite a bit above chance. So if you want to use a very nice scientific manifestation tool, we could call it magic. You know what magic means? It means beyond physics. But it just means beyond the physics of what we understand as physics, the physical universe. It means understanding the subtle nature of reality, the subtle grid, the subtle space that Nassim described as being structured completely with this formation. The Indra's net was called by the ancient ones, and masters of the net were the great wizards of old. You know, those terminologies apply. So the Sri Yantra is one of the potent manifestation tools, because your consciousness becomes at one with the great manifester of creation. So one of the cool things about being in the dome is that it's also like a pyramid in that regard, that it generates a singularity in the center, and that so pyramid means fire in the middle, pyramid, right? And so you get that clear luminous radiation point that enters the building in the center point. And there's your consciousness entering the building. So when you went to pray at the altar, which altered your consciousness, you were in the center of the temple or whatever building. So I am busy about making little temples every day over there across the highway. And we ship out at least a dome a day, and they're getting put up all over the place, and the feedback is amazing from people. Wow, we had life-changing, our clients who rent our dome all report these life-changing, amazing things, like their marriage was falling apart and now they're back together, or, you know, whatever things. And so we get all kinds of really great testimonies. Nassim was one of my favorites because he loved speaking in the dome. I put up domes at all the festivals for him to speak in, and it was his favorite place to speak because you actually are in touch with the clear, luminous light that is your divine consciousness, that is your divine intelligence, that then speaks and broadcasts out information. Did you know that the crowns that were made and worn by kings and queens were not just ornamental? They also generated a singularity in the center of that golden round circle, so that they could guide their people with intelligence and consciousness and awareness. And I knew that I was giving a talk once, and I just come up with this stuff somehow, I don't know where, but it happens. So I was talking about the foot of the ruler. They actually measured the village according to the resonance pattern of the leader, because back then a leader was chosen because they were highly spiritual initiate who actually had the divine intelligence and could guide their people. So they built the whole village to be in resonance with their measure. So these kinds of things we don't consider in our life at all, but this is how it was. And yes, question.
Yeah, so I hear there's a theme of synchronicity going on here, and it's really interesting. Yesterday I put an ad in Craigslist to offering my services as a land development consultant, thinking about all of my knowledge of how to feel what a land wants, and my love of building, and I love that a lot of this is architecture. And I'm wondering if you've ever been to Oroville in southern India. And the temple, I went in that temple.
You did,
clandestinely.
Yes. It's a big, yes. It's a big dome, right?
Well,
that
it's
one?
a huge dome,
yeah.
right? And you do a spiral staircase to the top, and there's this illuminated room at the top that lets light in, and there's a crystal bowl that the light, and there's these white columns, and then that is huge and amazing. But there's like 4 pods outside of the big golf ball,
Wow.
and they're all meditation chambers that all focus into the golf ball, and it's kind of like a spacecraft.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, well,
Heavy duty.
yeah, exactly. Do you guys know about Oroville in southern India? He's speaking about the temple they have that. So there's some Indian saints that live there. And actually, in our very little town of Ashland, Oregon, we have a beautiful man named Savitra. Savitra was a primary member of and founding member of Oroville community, and he planted trees everywhere. He reforested all of southern India at Oroville, and we should have him talk one day, Nikki, get Savitra to give a talk about that, because that's beautiful. But Sri Aurobindo was an Indian saint, and he had a cohort, the mother, they called her, that she was the divine mother. And she, I remember her books about flowers, because every flower had a meaning, and it was lovely. Anyway, yes, I knew about the dome.
And it's a full sphere.
And it's a full sphere.
It is a sphere.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about the domes having, the resonance that comes from the center, I know at the Goddess Temple here in Ashland that, and you donated that dome, right? So I for a lot of years I did some talking circles and stuff there, and in the center it echoes. So if you're standing at a certain place, all of a sudden there's a microphone.
Yes.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
like a natural microphone.
Exactly.
And I always thought, I didn't really know what that was.
That is
except
the-
it was right in the center.
That is the resonance spot.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. So that's the generator of all the energy in the dome. And it's amazing. You can really see the principles of this science in the dome and how the sound travels in the dome.
So
Yeah.
great.
She was talking about the Goddess Temple. If you haven't been there, at the Wellsprings, there's a dome that is used for gatherings, and Rowan has been instrumental in that whole project there. Yeah.
There's a place in Epidauros in Greece.
In Greece, there's
It's
a
an
place
amphitheater.
that's an amphitheater.
And when you drop a pin in the center and you're way in the last row,
When you drop a pin in the center and you're way in the last row, you can hear it all the way. Yeah. Yeah.
I experienced
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. That's the resonance. That's so. Yes.
I also noticed, I was in Tikal in Guatemala, and there's like 2 or 3 large pyramids with a huge courtyard between them, and you could hear somebody whispering like 200 yards
Yeah.
away, the same thing. It
Yeah,
was-
same thing,
it's
yeah.
Really, yeah.
Being in the resonance of it. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
And just your sharing brings the work of Michael Tellinger to mind, that there in South Africa, what he was discovering was that there was like this epicenter inside each of these circles
Yeah.
that were, hundreds, thousands of
Yep.
them that could be seen from the air. And the idea was that things rose. Like, this was the way that, if there was any truth to it, that the gold was being extracted
Oh,
and sent
interesting.
to another planet. Like, so it was the kind of, the
Wow.
whole, the mythology or
Right.
the other time.
Ancient histories. Who
Ancient
knows?
history.
Funny place.
Just a thought, how would that play out with maybe a kiva? Because that would have a center point to it
Yeah.
as well.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same. Yeah. Generally, your rule of thumb, which I learned from Nassim, is that you don't want to sleep there with your head in the center. If you're going to sleep in a building with a strong singularity pulse generator point, it's good to sit there and meditate, yes. It's good to have some good conversation there. It is an altar, and it's probably overwhelming to the body to actually sleep there. So he would put a cautionary on that one. Yeah. I should write that in my instruction manual. Do not sleep with your head in the center of the dome. You might.
Someone's gonna do it. You know someone's gonna do it.
Or somebody wonders why they were awake all night.
Yeah, exactly. Having all kinds of great wisdoms come through their brain. All right. So yeah, we have 15 minutes.
Question about your book. So
Mm-hmm.
it sounded like you had already published it, and then you're going to redo it, but it sounds like.
I've never published it, but you can have it. I can send you a link, and you can read it all. I mean, I would love. I kind of threw that together because I was teaching a class at Nassim. Nassim was doing an emissary training to teach everyone his physics. There was like 100 people there or something, and he had me teach a segment, which I sat at his feet most of the time translating to everyone what he was talking about, because he's like he's talking geek physics and like scholarly physics, and I'm talking English physics like kids can understand. And there were only a few physicists at the training. There were mostly just a bunch of geeks like us, So I was having to constantly, he let me interrupt him.
Was living in Hawaii.
Yeah, he was in Hawaii, then he went to LA, had funders. So you got to know what Nassim is working on. This is also another story we have 15 minutes. You guys want a good story? Okay. Where to start? 550 years ago, there was a Incan emperor named Pachacuti. Pachacuti had an inti, which was the Ark, the same as the Ark of the Covenant. These devices, there were many of them on the planet. They were used, as we said, originally to commune with divine consciousness, and he was at that time, the Incan Empire was the largest empire on the planet, 550 years ago. So he had a daughter who was born with blonde hair, blue eyes. How did that happen? They called her Oro. Oro was married to a conquistador, the son of a king, second son though. First son gets the kingdom, second son goes somewhere else and starts a kingdom, marries Pachacuti's daughter, and founds the city of Mendoza, Argentina. Many generations later, my mother is born, and always told us we were of Incan, royalty descent. We knew nothing of this till my sister went to Argentina, and the cousins gave her all the records showing the lineage from Pachacuti. So this inti was the device that, when I met Nassim Haramein, I was at a festival. I had put up a big dome. Zavi, who lives locally, had painted mandalas all over the dome. It was 36-foot diameter, 20 feet tall, and workshops were going to happen in the dome. And Nassim was about to teach a workshop, and I just finished setting the dome up with some volunteers, and I went to sit in the edge of the meadow, and I was meditating, and a voice came in my head. They do that sometimes. And all of a sudden, I'm being told that I'm about to meet the person I'm going to do my life's work with. And so I knew I was hearing a message from the angels, and I stood up and I was like, yes. I was in this meadow all by myself, and then across the meadow, my friend who had organized all the workshops calls me over and says, meet Nassim. We put our heads together and we just stayed there. Nassim started teaching his workshop. I knew everything he was talking about. I understood. After everyone was asking us both questions, he wanted me to work with him. I'm doing domes. That's my part of the story. You can risk your life on technology. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to build technology. My father built the first electromagnetic engine with Ev Gray. My father was a chemist from Europe, from Holland. He schooled in Zurich, and he built the first electromagnetic engine. He was the chemist on the project, which is a big responsibility. And that was the only successful electromagnetic engine to date, according to Kent Noonan. You probably know better, but So somehow it's in my lineage. My father was friends with Edgar Cayce. My oldest brother, wanted to build the Atlantean crystal, or the Ark of the Covenant. He went to UC Berkeley, got his physics. He dove into where Atlantis, off the shore he became a deep sea diver to explore Atlantis, and wanted, he's like an Indiana Jones. He put all Edgar Cayce's work online, if you want to know how you got all that. That was my brother, my oldest brother. So I have it in my blood to build an ark. Do you want to know what an ark is? Like, remember the story of Noah's Ark? That was not a boat. That was a ship.
Submarine.
You think it was a submarine? Oh, you're going to teach me something.
It's underwater the surface area because of the weight factor and the waves.
Okay.
It has to go in.
All right. He's saying it was a submarine. I always thought it was a spaceship.
Well, it is. That's what submarines are.
Oh, okay.
Can't go to space
Okay.
without the system.
Okay, got you. All right. This guy is brilliant,
Inner
just
space.
so you know. I defer to him.
You're contained in your inner space.
Cool, Andre. Okay, so anyway, that's what Nassim's working on, is the Ark. He's working on building a technology, bringing that technology that powered our civilizations without burning, combusting, or destroying anything in the material universe, pulling the information energy directly from the Mulam. Yes, from the Mulam. And giving humanity a fresh start. If we had that, and we will, again, have that, then we get rid of all of our problems, So, yeah, so this is the emergence, and it seems like it's taking forever, doesn't it? Good God.
I'm just present to, we think we're so smart, in this day and age. And what we're what I'm in the experience of is these ancient secrets, these ancient learnings and teachings that, are jaw-dropping.
Yeah, exactly.
And then over here thinking, let's see, it's actually fairly comical. If you want a good laugh, it's like, look at, contemporary culture, society, the world, and yet we have no idea.
Yeah, the intricacy of what ancient civilizations held is so beautiful, and also they did live longer. So, like, apparently Mayan lived over 10,000 years. So over that amount of time, you get some knowledge and some wisdom and, some experience, right? Yeah, so hopefully we're going for the eternal life realm next. Yeah.
So Asha, the Mayan was from Kumaria?
Sumerian. I believe it's the same as the Lemurian.
Same as Lemurian, is what I'm asking. And this was just the earliest civilization, or a very early.
Yeah.
Refined.
Exactly. And Dr. Ganapati did travel when he did the temple site. He also found that many of the languages of these, like the Yucatan Mayan people, when he sat with Humbatsman and they went through their sciences, they saw that this science was the same science, and it came from Mayan, the great teacher. Also, there was a Mayan that was Mayan student, also called Mayan, who crossed Ramayana's bridge and started the Hebrew traditions. So then you have the Essenes, the therapeutes, and all of that being born out of those traditions. So all of, you can go back, Dr. Ganapati put a beautiful book together about these histories and how they go, but one of the clues is that Prakrit, the language which Mayan wrote in originally, which Dr. Ganapati was translating, he was one of the only people translating Prakrit. So he was able to translate Mayan's actual sutras. He said that 80% of our current day languages are based on Prakrit. So that's pretty impressive right there. Yeah, so apparently,
Tower of Babel, then.
what's that?
The Tower of Babel.
The Tower of
there was
Babel.
one language.
Right. The Tower of Babel. Right. Yeah, the original language, which was sung. Oh.
So how does that language correspond with Sanskrit?
Yeah, Sanskrit was born from Prakrit. Yeah. It was after Prakrit, yeah. So yeah, I'm sure there's some similarities, but you could look that one up because I don't really know much.
So Mayan came from, the original teacher, Mayan came from the sun?
Yeah, apparently, well, there's quite a bit of information in this book about him. At one point, he left the planet and he went to the center of our sun and spent years there. Yeah, so apparently our sun isn't what we necessarily think of it as, being a ball of fire, you know, to be in the center, exactly. So.
With these kind of energy fields, even matter as we know it would be flexible, it would be different.
It would be different. Matter would be different. Yeah, matter doesn't matter as much as we think it does. Yeah, so, yep. I was going to tell one story. So because you brought up Lemuria. So when Lemuria sank, they knew it was going to sink according to Edgar Cayce, but those peoples, many of them left, just like Atlantis, they went other places, they knew it was happening. So they went to the high mountains of the Andes and to the China Plateau. And those were the Quechua people consider themselves direct descendants of the Lemurians, which would be Pachacuti. And my grandfather wrote books that are in the museums in Argentina. He was the ambassador to China for Argentina because he was showing the correlation of the Chinese language with the Quechua language to show that these were all descendants of Lemurians. So I've never met my grandfather because he was dead before I was born. But apparently there's some books I could read down in Argentina. So somebody had a question.
No, I was just going to throw in a piece of trivia since we were talking Mayan. My daughter's name is Mayan.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I was told, I have a
Similar story.
to pregnancy story like you, in that she came to me when I was pregnant and walking and out, anyway, several times. But she came to me as a 20-year-old, and one thing led to another. It's a very long story, but one thing came to another, and she came to me and said her name is Mayan, and that's who I am. And but it was and then searching around a little bit, I discovered that currently that's an Israeli desert name. I'm not Jewish, but I went to Rabbi David and said, okay, can you tell me about this? He said, I don't know it, but let me get back to you. And he did, and he said, yeah, it's a Israeli desert name meaning water from the spring.
Wow.
And it's really about bringing the balancing feminine.
Wow,
And then she was
beautiful.
born on International Women's Day, which was her due date, in the middle of her due date.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah, so we ended up
Love that.
spelling it M-Y-A-N, like Ryan,
Mayan,
instead of M-A-Y, because
Uh-huh.
I hadn't known about this man, but
this.
I didn't know about this work, but we didn't want her to be a tribe,
Yes, right,
you know,
right.
so we named it, so it's M-Y-A-N.
M-Y-A-N. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Thanks for sharing that.
I've never heard the name said so many times in a course of 2 hours.
Yeah, right.
Unless it was like a happy birthday party for her.
Yeah.
Right.
And she was born on March 8th,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Wow.
so I don't know.
Cool.
So the tie-up with the name Mayan, this is a being, and then the Mayan culture, and then we're in Tulum, and we're in,
Yeah.
Yucatan. So can you kind of
Yeah.
weave that?
There's some of that in this book because Dr. Ganapati, who brought Mayan's work, and Mayan appeared to him when he was young, a similar story. He was 12 years old, it's in the book, and Mayan appeared to him and said, he's going to be helping to bring back, resurrect this knowledge base. And how am I going to do that? And he said, I will stand by you your entire life. So there was a really beautiful story where this old sage came to the temple gate of Dr. Ganapati and said, I must speak to him in the middle of the night. And the guards came and woke him up, and they brought him in. And this man had spent his whole life memorizing. He's a bard. And he memorized all the sutras of Mayans' work in an ancient temple in India, and found Dr. Ganapati, came knocking at his door, and then translated gave him all of that. And that, is that the Eintrim? That's the book that Andre digitized. It's on my website.
It's really very interesting. It's all Om light, Om sound. And the beginning of creation by the dragon.
It's all Om light, Om sound. Go ahead, 'cause I got the
So
mic.
when the dragon sneezed, it created the cosmos, and the whole story goes into light, sound, numbers, sequences, music. It all ties everything together.
Wow.
It's like,
Yeah.
we didn't learn this in grade school.
Yeah. So, born from RVML, we had that, the Tuesday night thing was going on way back then. And then when they moved out of A Street, they stopped. But we didn't stop. We kept doing it at my house. And so there was a team of us that got together every week, and we just kept going. And some of these people were vortex-based mathematicians. Other people were Vedic mathematicians. There was sacred geometry. There was the sacred geometry code. There was somatics, technologies. All kinds of scientists came. We had Dr. Mosen, who also came, amazing scientist. I'm still friends with him, and he lives down in Clear Lake. This man also had prophetic information about the law of time. Because that stuff was hidden. The Library of Alexandria was destroyed. He's Persian, Dr. Mosen, and so he had this ancient wisdom, and he came and taught us a whole class on that this is the transitional time. And he said there will be a time when the axis shifts of the Earth, and the molecules of everything that are man-made, that are not dynamic in nature, will just dissipate. So when you talk about tuning the radio, when she said we'll find ourselves in the original Earth of Eden at a higher octave, that is a similar prophecy. It is also, I said to him when he said that, did you know this is also the prophecy of the Hopi Native American Indians? They say you will be walking along and all of a sudden everything man-made will just disappear. So if you're worried about how to get rid of that plastic in the ocean, no, I don't think we should wait. We don't know when this is going to happen.